Fear is something we all share. Of course, we're all scared of different things, but that creeping sense of dread, that spine-tingling feeling of unease, is an inherent and primal connection that binds us together. It makes us human. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends is, for all intensive purposes, a kids show. It is, was, and still is enjoyable for all ages, but I don't think I can exactly claim it wasn't a kids show. The episodes were usually friendly, 4.5-ish minute long tales, with the characters we all know and love, getting up to all sorts of antics, usually with some sort of lesson being learned at the end. There were the familiar themes of Micah Jr. playing throughout, funny little quips by the narration, and nothing too scary or serious. Usually. We always knew that by the end of those 4 minutes, everything would be fine. Maybe someone would be a bit roughed up or left in a shed, but it would be fine. Thomas was a comfy show that you could sit back and enjoy, and I have fond memories of all of it. Well, mostly all of it. Do you remember which episode scared me the most?
I really do remember the episode, yes.
Which was?
Boulder.
Yeah.
And used to run out the room screaming and try and hide behind me and run around like a headless chicken because it terrified you.
Did it?
Yes, it did.
Scared me that much?
It scared you that much.
Oh.
And I still remember it to this day.
So you'd say that definitely traumatised me as a child?
Definitely, yes. I don't know why, but it did.
Rusty and the Boulder is one of a few truly standout episodes of Series 5, which is already known for its very dramatic stories. It's not a pleasant, comfortable episode. In fact, other than Michelangelis' comedic Yikes! There's not really anything joyous or heartfelt here. Duncan Gets Spooked and Stepney Gets Lost are two other famously dramatic episodes, but even they had some funny bits at the start, and a happy ending in the latter's case. Rusty and the Boulder has none of that. It's just pure drama throughout. The episode kicks off in the mountains, where a mysterious boulder has been perched high up for many years, alone. The ominous and quite sad sounding music from Toby and the Flood is reused to great effect here, really setting the mood and atmosphere. One day, workmen show up on the scene to establish a quarry at the base of the mountain, bringing Rusty with them. Nothing really seems out of the ordinary so far. It's just an old mountain with a boulder on top. While Rusty is working, he speaks to Thomas and Percy, who are waiting at some sheds. He's getting some seriously dodgy vibes from the boulder, and thinks it's watching him. Percy refutes this because obviously boulders don't have eyes, but Rusty still gets an uncomfortable feeling from it. This is where the mystery starts to set in, because as far as we know it's just an ordinary boulder, an inanimate chunk of rock. Why does Rusty think it's watching him? Do any of the other engines or workmen have the same creeping feeling? Next, Edward arrives at the shed, and there's a feature of this episode that I never really thought about until watching this as an adult. Edward is dropping off a new piece of machinery, some kind of digging vehicle called Thumper. Now, as we all know, most machines in Thomas are considered living, breathing characters, anthropomorphic vehicles. They have faces, they experience emotions, and they can talk. That's basically what the show revolves around after all. Thumper is a bit different. First of all the other characters have noted genders. James is a male, Mavis is a female, and all that. Thumper is explicitly referred to as an it. In addition, Thumper doesn't have a single line of dialogue this one episode that it appears in, nor does it have any significant involvement in the episode, other than being the machine that causes Boulder to dislodge. It is by all accounts a non-character, a simple piece of machinery like the breakdown train. There's nothing weird about that, of course, but Thumper does have a face, implying it is of course sentient. There's a smile on the face too, which means it could have emotions, but still, I find it strange that in a world of talking, emoting, vehicular characters, this one just shows barely any signs of actually being a character, is referred to as an it, and has no lines, yet still possesses a face. Is it some sort of half-sentient machine that is only capable of performing its function while staring blankly? Does it choose not to speak while on the job, and is actually a super cool individual whilst off the job? We have no way of knowing. Ultimately, it's just a one-off character used to set the plot in motion, but it did make me think about the way this universe works with its machines. When Thumper gets to work, a few rocks come loose from the mountain beneath Boulder, and we can see that something is stirring, almost as if some force has been awakened from its slumber. A rainfall causes the workmen to go away and wait it out, leaving Rusty and his driver alone with the boulder. When Rusty gazes up at the boulder, he can't help but shiver, probably thinking that it's still watching him. A slab of rock somehow gets dislodged from the mountain and slams onto the rails right in front of the engine, and his driver decides to vacate the area until it's dry. Rusty, believing that the slab was not just pushed by water, but was actually Boulder's doing, leaves. It's then we learn that Rusty wasn't going insane after all. The boulder has indeed been watching him. This shot that reveals Boulder's face absolutely terrified me as a child, so much that I had to hide behind the settee. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this image haunted me as a kid, and it still gives me shivers to this very day. That little music flourish that sounds like the PlayStation 1 startup sound accompanies the fade in, fade out face reveal, making it seem really mysterious and otherworldly. Ugh. Considering the fact that I already found Gordon's various faces up close also to be pants-wettingly unsettling, having that same face superimposed over a scary boulder was just a whole different level of terrifying for me. Up until now, any mysterious or ghostly things we saw on the show had all been explained away. The ghost train? Just something Percy's driver saw on telly. All that stuff in Haunted Henry? It was just Old Bailey. This boulder with a face? Nothing. It just has a face and is apparently sentient. That is just creepy. Now, we could just attribute this to Rusty's own paranoia, and assume that it really is just an actual boulder that doesn't have any characterization. Maybe that face really was just Rusty imagining things, and it wasn't actually doing anything of its own accord. Many of the weird aspects of Thomas are left ambiguous and up to the viewers to make their own minds up, which is the best way to do it, I think. This is no different, and whether or not you believe the boulder is actually sentient or not is up to your own discretion. I'll leave my own personal thoughts on this topic until a bit later on. A bit later, the rain subsides, and work resumes at the quarry. Thumper is thumping away at the rocks, and all seems well until Rusty notices that Boulder has started to move. Somehow, the colossal rock has begun rolling off its perch, and lands on the track directly in front of the little engine. It immediately rolls forward, beginning an epic chase through the mountains. Rusty reverses into a different rail and thinks he's safe, but Boulder has now snuck up on him and approaches from behind. It's not until his driver notices that Rusty is finally able to drive to safety, leaving Boulder to continue its rampage elsewhere. Scar Lowy and Rheneas are unfortunate enough to be working on the railway that day, and wind up crossing paths with the out-of-control rock, with a yikes from each of them. It's worth mentioning that throughout this sequence, there's almost no music playing. Action set pieces in Thomas always had accompanying music to fit the scene, like the Runaway theme or something else. But the Boulder sequence in this episode only has these dramatic flourishes every so often, with no consistent music track in between. It really makes it seem more like a serious, dangerous event that could have real casualties, like something out of Tugs maybe. The action scene reaches its climax at the sheds where Percy is waiting. Boulder rolls towards him, while Percy closes his eyes, waiting for the impact to happen. Luckily, Boulder just misses Percy and rolls right past, crashing into the shed, which then catches fire. And then explodes. Awesome. If Percy had been hit, then he probably would have been crushed. Maybe. I'm not really sure how tough an engine is against a big chunk of rock, but I imagine it would do some serious damage. The Fat Controller arrives to inspect the damage, and stands there contemplating what he sees. After witnessing the chaos caused by the boulder, he finally decides that it isn't worth continuing the work and closes down the line. It's his dialogue here that really intrigues me.
"We should have left this part of the island alone," he said thoughtfully.
You could either take this in two different ways. Option 1 is the rational explanation. He saw the damage that a falling boulder did as a result of it breaking free due to the work dislodging it, and decides that it's a hazardous area that may be prone to more rockfalls as a result of the mining activity. Too dangerous, let's not work here anymore. Option 2, I think, is the more interesting one. Does the Fat Controller believe that Boulder is truly more than an inanimate chunk of rock, and closes down the mine out of fear that he's angered it? Is he closing it down out of respect for whatever forces at play? Or because he doesn't want to risk more damage? Was he already aware of some spooky rumours surrounding this part of the island, and had a hunch that something like this may happen? The speculation is endless. There's so much more mystery with speculation for theories and other ideas here. I think it's awesome. I can already imagine the amount of fan theories there is about this. After the mine is shut down, Boulder is moved to a different hill near the yards, and Rusty believes that it gazes up at the mountain where it once proudly stood, and its sides are carried on the wind. The narration concludes with asking the viewer if they agree what Rusty thinks, once again leaving it open to the viewer. This ending is actually quite sad, because if Boulder really is sentient, then it now has to sit there on this smaller hill, forever forced to gaze upon its former home. Rusty and the Boulder is a really good episode of the show, and in a similar vein to Duncan Gets Spooked, it's quite unlike any of the others. The lack of jokes and kind-hearted moments throughout are punctuated with the emotional music at the beginning and the end, and the noticeable lack of music during the chase scene. It's all quite dramatic and serious. Boulder's sentience is left ambiguous, and it's up to the viewer to decide whether or not they believe it. Again, this is similar to Duncan Gets Spooked, where the ambiguity of it can please fans who either want it to stay grounded, or are open to the weird, supernatural aspect of Sodor. Personally, I like to believe that there are creepy and unexplained things occurring on the island, because it makes it feel more mysterious and unknowable. The Fat Controller's line about leaving that part of the island alone is an interesting one, because of the implications that I covered earlier. Even if the whole thing with Boulder is just nonsense, the story still has meaning as a cautionary tale of what can happen when you mess with the environment and disturb nature. The expansion work into the mountains clearly caused disruption that set a boulder loose, which then went to cause all sorts of chaos. Though we see the island of Sodor as this happy location full of cheerful characters, it's still important to remember that industrialization can impede on natural environments and cause disasters. Regardless of whether or not Boulder was truly sentient, it still came loose as a result of the work being carried out and caused damage. It's not really a pleasant thing to think about, but because of the nature of the industry, there must have been plenty of disruption as Sodor grew more advanced and its railways expanded. Habitats destroyed, landscapes transformed, and even people losing their homes is an unfortunate byproduct of industrialisation, and since it's happened in real life, it's reasonable to assume that the same thing happened on Sodor too. For all we know, there are even more accidents similar to what we saw in this episode elsewhere, throughout the years of the island's history. Yeah, it's just an episode where a big boulder goes on a rampage and chases some engines around, but it does make you think. This video was originally going to just be talking about how much Rusty in the Boulder scared me, but rewatching it a few times gave me a lot more to think about. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me ramble on about this episode. I'm definitely going to make more videos on standout episodes that I feel are worth talking about. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment telling me what you think. Thank you for watching and have a great day.